Hi, my name is Santiago Lyon, and I work for Adobe, specifically on the Content Authenticity Initiative. This initiative was started in late 2019 by Adobe, the New York Times Company, and Twitter in response to increasing concerns about the dangers of mis- and disinformation. When we took a look at the misinformation landscape, we identified four main areas. Detection. This involves uploading files to programs that look for anomalies that might indicate that a file has been manipulated. For example, misaligned pixel structure or inconsistent lighting sources, or telltale signs that would allow a forensic investigator to determine that an image had been changed. This software, while useful, has a couple of major problems. Number one, it's not really scalable. It would just take too long to run the billions of images that are floating around the internet through detection software. And number two, it really is an interminable arms race, with bad actors trying to stay one step ahead of the detectives. And for those two reasons, while detection software will undoubtedly become more useful over time, it's not the main focus of our efforts. Next is legislation. Adobe, like many companies, has a robust government relations team that advise legislators and policymakers about the state of technology, what to expect, and best practices. We're actively involved advising governments and legislative bodies around the world in terms of best practices, and will continue to do so. Thirdly is the area of education, or media literacy. This involves helping people learn best practices to determine what's true and what's fake. And it's a very important area and one that we'll continue to focus on. And lastly, but not leastly, is the area of provenance. This is where we're focused. Provenance means determining the origins of an image, who made it, and what happened to it along its journey from creation through editing and on to publication. We are thus a group of major media and technology companies promoting and driving the open industry standard for content authenticity and provenance. Important to note the word open. This means that while this technology will be incorporated into some Adobe products, it will be available for all to use. And that's really important. Important to note that this effort is for the benefit of everybody. We started with 3 members in late 2019 and are now at over 375. On the media side of things, in addition to the New York Times and Twitter, we have the Washington Post, Agence France-Presse, the global French news agency, BBC, Getty Images, Gannett, the largest newspaper chain in the United States, and a host of others. And on the technology side of things, we have Microsoft and ARM, who make the processors for Apple computers, and Qualcomm, who make the image sensors for the Android system, and Nikon, one of the leading camera manufacturers. It's a fast-growing community, becoming more robust every day. Our mission is really all about trust and bolstering trust in media through robust, tamper-evident provenance data that shows how content is produced, edited, and published. We've divided the work up into 4 main areas: capture, edit, publish, and trust. On the capture side of things, we're working directly with camera and smartphone manufacturers to incorporate the CAI technology into their devices at production. This means that in a couple of years, when you go to buy a smartphone or a purpose-built camera, it will have the CAI technology in it out of the box. You will opt in to activate it, and if you do opt in, it does a couple of things. First of all, it secures all of the existent metadata fields that your device currently generates, things like XMP and EXIF and IPTC. Those metadata fields capture important details about when an image was made, how it was made, where it was made, and who made it. And while that information exists, it's not at all secure. Anybody can go in there, hack it, and change it. So the first thing that this technology does is it secures that information. Secondly, it prepares the image for the next stage of its journey, which is typically editing. Whether you're using an Adobe tool or the editing software that comes on your smartphone, everything that you do to the image gets captured. Every change that you make gets captured, whether you crop it, tone it, darken it, lighten it, add something, subtract something. All of those are captured as actions and securely stored for later review, an additional layer of metadata. The next thing is publishing. Most publishing systems currently strip metadata from files. They do this either because they're legacy systems that were built at a time when storage and throughput were very different from what they are today, or because the metadata is not secure, publishers are nervous about spreading and publishing unsecured metadata that might contain personal information. Whatever the reason, publishing systems currently mainly strip metadata from files. We're arguing that because the metadata is secure and contains valuable information, they should leave this metadata intact. This leads us to the fourth area, which is trust, indicated here by the little I on the right-hand side of the slide. This allows the viewer to click on the eye or mouse over it and expose some or all of the data about where the image came from and what might have been done to it along its journey. We call these content credentials. We take a little deeper look here at the types of things we're capturing in the content credentials. At the moment of creation, we might capture things like the date, the tool, who pressed the button. The moment of editing, things like the date the edit was made, what edits were made, with what editing tool, and by whom. On the publishing level, we might check who reviewed the image, who published it, when. On the sharing, if a social media company was optimizing files for delivery, let's say routinely shrinking the file size to make them easier to share, that also would be captured. And so at its broadest implementation, we would capture all of these data fields and make them visible to the public. But of course, we understand that different organizations have different use cases. And one of the important things to note here is that this information and these parameters are all customizable. If you have a need to redact something for security or safety reasons, you can do that. We want this to be as useful to as many different constituents as possible. How do we secure the metadata? We secure it using assertions, which is what was done to an image and by whom and when. And then we use ACID hashes to cryptographically secure those assertions using code. And then we use claims, bundles of assertions and their ACID hashes, and we store this information in any number of places. The information can be stored as a sidecar to the file itself. It can be stored in the cloud with a pointer from the file to the cloud, or a combination of both, depending on what works best for the user. The main thing is that the information is secure and later reviewable. Our guiding principles are fairly straightforward. Privacy first and foremost. Next, global accessibility. We want this to become ubiquitous around the world. Then we must have and will have protections against misuse. And then we want it to fit with existing workflows in a simple and affordable way, while being high performance as well as interoperable and extensible. But in order to achieve those things and make an open industry standard, we needed to set up a whole different organization. And so we did, the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity, or C2PA. This is within the Linux Foundation, one of the leading open source organizations in the world. And while it has many of the same members that are in the CAI, it's a smaller group and their task is different. Their task is to create the blueprint that underpins the technology in a way that makes sense to technologists around the world. And to that end, Adobe is on the steering committee and chairs the technical working group. The specs for public review are now available, and we plan to release a version 1 in early 2022. So where are we? This is a timeline of our progress thus far. In 2019, as I mentioned, we announced the CAI with the New York Times Company and Twitter. In 2020, we held our first summit meeting at our headquarters in San Jose. This was a very remarkable meeting in the sense that it was a very diverse group of participants, representing media, technology, academia, human rights, and others. And usually, with such a diverse group, consensus is elusive. In this particular case, consensus was overwhelming. This was a sensible approach and one that we must investigate. So we did, leading to the publication of a white paper in August of 2020, outlining everybody's viewpoints and concerns and how to mitigate them. In October of last year, we unveiled a private beta version of Photoshop at Adobe Max, our flagship technology conference. In December of last year, we did our first hardware-software prototype. This involved a custom-built CAI-enabled smartphone in the hands of a professional photographer who made images that were then processed using a CAI-enabled version of Photoshop, and the resulting changes exposed using Verify software, which is part of the CAI. In February, we founded the C2PA, and then in March and May of this year, we did a couple of proofs of concept, one with Reuters and one with the New York Times R&D. And then in September of this year, we published the draft spec for review. The Reuters proof of concept involved Reuters photographers fanning out across the United States to document the 78-day period between the presidential election and inauguration in the United States. They used their professional cameras tethered to purpose-built smartphones that captured the provenance information, and we worked closely with them to reveal the provenance information using the Verify software, indicated here with the little white box. Subsequently, the New York Times R&D department did their own proof of concept, taking and running an image through Photoshop and then exposing the changes using our Verify software here on the right-hand side of the image. The three key areas of focus then are the open standard specification, the work being done by the C2PA, the implementation and member collaboration of the members of the CAI, and overall education and advocacy. And so what's the ask for organizations that might want to get involved? Consider joining the CAI. There's no cost involved. Why would you do this? Because a large and robust community will affect meaningful change. It will also allow you to be involved in prototyping and implementing CAI technology, as well as strong networking, collaboration, and business opportunities between members. Thank you.